All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green. If you are new here, make sure that you subscribe. Brand new interviews every Monday and Friday, and there's about 50 on here that you can go back and binge watch. My guest today is Mick Sweda from the Bullet Boys, King Kobra, and more. We're going to talk about all that right after this.
Just wanna waste some time with you. Sometimes it seems too good to be true. Nobody I know can waste time without
All right, he's about to leave to go on the road, so let's get right to it. Here he is, Mick Sweda.
Hi, guys.
Mick, I'm glad you can join me. I think we're going to have a good time. A lot of cool stuff to talk about. You've got some history. I got to tell you that when I was younger, and I'm a little bit younger than you guys are. When Bullet Boys came out on MTV, it seemed as if this was a brand new band, and I feel like maybe it was marketed that way. People didn't talk about your past and King Kobra and things, and also you guys were kind of put out as if you were one of the Sunset Strip bands. Everyone kind of came out at the same time, and you guys were a little bit different than that. You weren't the going out on the strip flyering and playing those clubs band, and also you had a history before with King Kobra. So I want to dial back to some of that because I think there's a lot of interesting things. And then we'll get into what's going on with the Bullet Boys. To say you guys are dysfunctional, might be an understatement sometimes. But so let's go all the way back. You're from New York. You're from upstate New York, right?
Yeah, I mean, they call it upstate, but it's around the Buffalo area. I grew up in actually a couple of very small towns in what's thought of as Western New York, close to the Pennsylvania border, for that matter. In fact, in those days, Pennsylvanians would come over to New York and party because the bars were open till 4 a.m. You only had to be 18, so it was there's a lot of that going on back then.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to paint the picture of how things were so different.
Yeah.
And so you had a friend who got a guitar and started playing, and you saw it and said, this is something that I want to get into, right?
Yeah, it's really funny to think that I never imagined that I'd be able to do what I loved so much. I mean, I was a music fan. I studied it. And when I saw somebody playing guitar, it was a revelation to me. I was very shocked. So I took to it pretty quickly and worked really hard on it, and everything else sort of fell by the wayside.
Yeah, and then you also went to college around that time, right? Were you studying drama?
I got a theater scholarship at little JCC, it was called JCC, a community college, and that was fun. I mean, it was an interesting time, and I got to meet a lot of great people. But I really concentrated on starting to craft some songwriting abilities and playing out, and ultimately that was where my heart was the whole time I was in school.
Yeah, and like most people who you had that urge to move to California and to try to get it going. So tell me what it's like. What goes into your mind when you decide I'm going to pack up and go to LA? Did you know anyone?
I had my sister out here, so we stayed with her for a little bit. But other than that, no, it was a wide open plane. And at that point, I was fearless. I mean, I wasn't leaving anything behind. I didn't feel like I was going to miss out on anything, or, taking so much of a chance that I'd never make it back. I mean, I figured California would be warm enough to sleep in a car at night, as naive as I was. But everything ended up working out, and I ended up getting all the experience that I needed to, get it going the way I did.
Yeah, that's the school of hard knocks. You go out and you do it firsthand. And so you're playing with a few bands in California. A band called Stormtrooper. You recorded an EP with those guys. And what kind of places were you playing?
Well, that was one of the problems. We weren't really playing out. Like, I don't think we ever played a gig in that band. They may have before and after, but that was one of the problems that I had early on in my career. I wasn't playing out enough, and so I got into a position where I was prepared to move back east to join a band that was playing out a lot, and certainly it would have been covers, and it might have changed my career pretty dramatically. But that's the frustrating point at which I was.
Yeah. And that's a tough decision for a lot of people. Do you go back or do you plow on through? And fortunately, you stayed it out because at some point, Carmine, a piece finds you. And so how does that happen? Because that would be the beginning of King Kobra.
Yeah, well, I was playing in a cover band at the time, and I thought, well, if I'm ever going to get anything going out here, I'm not going to be able to. I won't be able to work every night and not play out and not rehearse. So I quit, which was a great situation to go to work at a record store, and that turned into Carmine's manager asking me if I played bass. I don't. Sorry. Well, okay, cool. Good luck. And I guess when they needed a guitar player, Carmine came in shortly after that, maybe a week later. And keep in mind, this is all around the time that I was thinking about moving back east. And so I went to the audition, got the gig, and I think probably less than a month later, we were recording our first record.
And at that point, Carmine is already a pretty legendary guy. He's appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show with, Vanilla Fudge, and he's just coming off Ozzy at this point. So he's probably got some hype around him. It's a pretty big deal for him to want you to be part of this band. So King Kobra goes into the studio. Spencer Proffer is the producer, who's, a famous guy, kind of famous for Quiet Riot also. But I've heard a lot of people I've interviewed didn't have the best experiences with Spencer. They thought that he really wanted things to go their direction or turn their band into a Slade cover band. So what was your experience like?
Well, not very different from that, but at the time it really wasn't even my material. When I joined that band, virtually all the songs were written. And David Michael Phillips had a huge part in that. I think a lot of those tracks were ideas that gestated with him. So I really didn't have any skin in the game at that point, and I was just ready to learn from Spencer. And did he bring in like a slew, like his cabal of writers and friends, and did he introduce songs that he had full ownership of for us to do? Yeah, he did all that, of course. And I can't imagine there's a producer out there that hasn't done it or thought about it at any given time. So like I said, I didn't really stand to lose that much because it wasn't my record. I was getting a weekly check, and I just wanted to experience it. It was interesting to go into pre-production and really dissect the songs and put them under a microscope. That was an interesting experience for me, because prior to that, you're just in a room with a bunch of guys, and you're doing what you do and everybody else does what they do, and you don't really get a chance to focus in on the details.
Yeah, and like you say, you're a young guy. You're going to go in. You probably don't know. At that point, you assume this is what it's like, and I'm just going to learn everything I can. And I mean, you also can't imagine what you don't know if the record's going to do well or not. This could be a one-time thing.
That's absolutely right. I mean, certainly I had zero experience in the business at that point, at least in terms of being signed and selling records and what the record company actually expects of you. It was wide open. And again, I really enjoyed working with these guys, and they were all very cool and funny and approachable, and it was a great situation. So I really didn't have anything to complain about. I just really wanted to enjoy the moment and take it all in. And I think I did a pretty good job of that.
Yeah. So this record's recorded around 84, comes out 85, and creates a little bit of a buzz. People were into it. And you guys got some really major tours on this. Yeah.
The Kiss, I believe it was Asylum. I get them confused. But that was a great experience, and we got to play some shows with some of my heroes. I had never realized how much Ted Nugent had influenced me, and we got to play shows with him. So again, it was just a wonderful experience for me, and I just enjoyed being in the show.
Yeah, and so So the 85, it comes out. 86, you guys do the follow-up. I had Johnny Rod on, bass player, obviously, for the band. And I think that he felt that a lot of people might have been a little disappointed by the follow-up. Do you think it was rushed to do that?
No, I think we just got backed into a corner where the first record didn't really meet their expectations. It was critically acclaimed, but in terms of sales, it fell far short of what they were hoping for, and certainly what we were hoping for. So the record label pressured us to come up with a record that was more, I don't know, relatable, more pop oriented, easier to get on the radio, I suppose. And for me, that was kind of right up my alley because I'm a pop guy. I've been a power pop guy from way back, and at that time I was still learning how to craft a song. And so when the opportunity for us to come in and create more, boy, I hate to keep using the word, but more of a pop record, I embraced it. And it turned out that Mark and Johnny both really loved the idea too. Dave, not so much. So I have more of a stamp on the second record, and yeah, people were expecting something very different, but that has never bothered me. I like going in different directions. I like doing something new. I like trying things, no matter what they are, and that it doesn't really bother me that the records sort of have two different personalities. I think there are elements of that first record that you could point to a power pop sort of underpinning. So yeah, I don't have any regrets about the second record other than it didn't sell millions.
Right. That's always a regret. Iron Eagle, Never Say Die movie soundtrack. You guys get this, sort of a theme in what became a pretty popular movie and still a cult movie.
Let me walk that no regrets back, because what should have been still a pretty heavy guitar album turned into one that is just drenched in keyboards. So there's my regret, although it's hard to call it a regret and you really don't have any choice in it. I mean, we delivered a bunch of rock songs and the producer just went to town with the keyboards. So yeah, that I could say as a regret. Doing the Iron Eagle song, I mean, we were hoping that it would really help our record along and introduce us to a new cadre of fans. Again, the expectations weren't really met there, but it was a wonderful experience all the way through. And yeah, it's too bad we couldn't have. I think the record deserved a better fate, frankly.
Yeah, Johnny said exactly what you said, that they added all these keyboards later, that the original tracks were more rock songs,
Yeah,
and that it got softened up, and that if the original versions came out, who knows, you might have had a different thing, because it's one thing to have a pop song, but it's another thing to have that pop, full on pop sound and be completely different. But some people love this record. It's some people, this is the record that they discovered.
Yeah, I'm working with Shane and my band, The Hot Summers, and it's one of his favorites. He loves it. He can't even stand the first record, and he loves this one. So I found
I should mention The Hot Summers, because this is a really catchy, this is a really power pop kind of thing, and it's really great. I listened to it, and there's some clips on your YouTube channel that people can look up. And they can buy the records, right? We can put that in the link.
Yeah. I think, boy, I'm not even sure what's available now. I think the last one is available. But yeah, I'm currently mixing it right now, and it should be out. Might be a little late, hopefully in August.
Yeah, but I think that people who like music with a big hook and real fun songs, it's great. So I think we'll link that, so people should check out The Hot Summers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so okay. So now, King Kobra, your lead singer is Mark Free. Now, Mark Free, he was dealing with gender dysphoria. I think later in life, I don't know how long, and he made the decision many years later to transition, I believe is the term, and became Marcy Free. And so is a she now, and so at the time, Mark leaves the band, and Mark Torian comes in the band, right?
That's correct. Along with
So
Lonnie, the bass player from Bullet Boys.
okay, so he was in too. So tell me what this is like, because this is 3 members of the Bullet Boys in King Kobra.
Yeah. Well, I had just met those guys. I didn't know them at all. So it was a new experience for both Dave, or for Dave Carmine and I. And I think the first thing that happened is we had some shows in Spain booked. So we went over there and we played Madrid and I think a couple of other places. I had a great time and came back, did a couple of shows around LA. And at that point, I could tell that Carmine was really grasping and searching for some answers. One of those answers was Gene Simmons, who at that time I think had just started a record label, and he had a couple of songs that I can imagine he's given out to every band he's ever talked to. So we covered those, and it was clear to me at that point that the search for success was going in the wrong direction for me. So pretty quickly after that, I made the decision to bail, and I talked to Mark and Lonnie about coming along, and Dave as well. And it turned out that they were really happy to be in a big band, and they saw better things coming down the road. So I left the band and started auditioning other players. And when they realized later on, I don't know if it was weeks or a month later, that maybe it would be more fun to hang out and write new songs with me, that's ultimately what ended up happening. So
Yeah. Do you know, rewinding a little bit, do you know why Mark Free left the band?
wow, I should. It was a pretty devastating moment. You know, we were all at the manager's house and having a meeting, and it sounded like Mark had something explosive to say, and I think that was it. But I'm not really sure. I sort of lost touch with him after that, so I'm not sure if he went to maybe Unruly Child, or I think there was another band that he was involved in as well. But I know he had some other guys that he was interested in playing with.
Have you
and I
been in
think that,
contact with Marcy Free since?
yeah, over the years, very rarely, but I hope we're still on good terms. I love Mark. I mean, he's absolutely the pinnacle of singers for me.
And we have to call it she now. So I'm trying
Yeah,
to keep you,
yeah.
I'm trying to keep
My
you on good terms.
apologies. That's absolutely correct. I'm putting myself back in 1986.
Completely understand.
So yeah, Marcy is a fabulous person, and we've gotten along very well. And I hope to see her again soon at some point.
Yeah, and for a minute, you guys were doing a King Kobra reunion. I'm jumping ahead now to the 2000s.
Yeah.
And you worked with them a little bit. And I asked Johnny if the invitation was there to Marcy to do it. And he said yes. Do you remember it that way also?
I really wasn't that involved. Basically, they just sent me tracks to play on, and that's kind of what I did. So as much as I hoped that Marcy would participate in that, it wasn't to be. And I know even more recently, Carmine asked if I'd be interested. And my response was that only if the 5 of us could get together, you know, Marcy included. So yeah, my involvement is not going to happen at this point.
Yeah, that's what I understood. And it would be great to do it. And as far as Marcy goes, this was a sort of groundbreaking thing at the time. There was no Kardashians on TV. This was a different decision to make back in 1993. Did you have any idea that that she was dealing with this gender dysphoria?
I did. I didn't have terms for it, but I recognized a sort of discomfort, a kind of edginess that I couldn't quite describe. I mean, he always comported himself in a very professional way. And, you know, I just loved and learned a lot from him. But at the same time, yeah, there were things that I couldn't necessarily explain that I recognized as something that was troubling him.
Yeah. So it's interesting because Johnny said he didn't know, but Johnny also just might have been in his own, world.
I guarantee you that.
Yeah. Yeah. If for those who haven't watched it, they can watch that interview. It's definitely it's definitely an interesting one.
Hey, Johnny, love you, brother.
But yeah, so okay, so that sort of closes the chapter on King Kobra and gives us a chance to sort of concentrate now on the Bullet Boys. So Mark and Lonnie decide to leave King Kobra, also work with you, and where do you find Jimmy Danda?
Well, I think Mark knew Jimmy from way back. They lived in the same neighborhood, and when we fired the drummer that we had originally, we ended up at a party, and I think we agreed to play Misty Mountain Hop, and I think he'd auditioned prior to that. I don't know. The timeline is eluding me, but I'll just never forget at that party when he came in and he played that drum fill to get into Misty Mountain Hop. I don't even remember caring what happened after that. Like, that drum fill just got him in the band as far as I was concerned.
Yeah. And Mark Torian has a really interesting background. He was in Rat at some point. Can you tell me when he was in Rat?
No.
Yeah, it's a very tricky thing. I had Matt Thorne on the other day, and we were talking about those early days of Rat. We never got into Mark's involvement, but there's that, and then I believe at some point he auditioned for Ozzy on guitar. Do you know that one?
I don't.
You see, he's got this complicated world of things that he was involved with, but he was sort of on that scene before. So I think that people knew him, and they certainly knew you from the two albums with King Kobra. Bullet Boys, like I was saying, is not a band that goes out and has to play the strip and do the flyering. You guys did it differently. The way you got your record deal, everything. So tell me about how that goes.
Well, it was very difficult for all of us, really, because none of us had jobs. We didn't have any incomes, but we had faith in each other, and we knew that if we stuck together and we worked hard enough and we created songs that meant something to us, that we wouldn't necessarily have to go out and pound the strip. We would find a way, and that's what we did. I mean, I at the time was living 2 hours out in the mountains and driving in every Monday morning, picking up Lonnie, going to rehearsal, staying at Lonnie's house. We rehearsed 5 days a week, and just crafted our songs. And of course we'd end up on the strip. Of course we'd go to the Rainbow. Of course we had, as much fun as everybody else. But what we didn't do is play Gazzari's a ton and play the Whiskey. And we really didn't play that many shows. I think, in fact, up to the time we got signed, I don't know if we played more than 8 or 10 shows. And most of those were down in the South Bay in a place called Dancing Waters. So we really concentrated on what I refer to as woodshedding, just working on our songs and making sure they were the best they could possibly be. And then one night when I was on the strip, I happened to see a guy who had been in the merchandising department of King Kobra's merchandiser. And he said, "Hey, I'm moving into management. If you guys ever, have something going on, let me know. Give me a call and let's see if we can strike something up." So that's exactly what happened. I gave him a call. He came and saw the band, and he loved what he saw. And there were still some wheels that had to be turned at that point with him and his management company, but it all got sorted out, and he got to a point where he got CBS to foot us $5,000 to do a demo, which we did with Garth Richardson, who I love dearly. Hello, Garth. And so we went into Amigo, cut 4 songs, and CBS passed on them. and we had to wait a month, I think. It might have felt like 2 before we could shop it. So when we finally were able to shop the tape, our manager got it to virtually everybody. And luckily for me, because I was a huge fan of the palm trees on the records, we got in touch with Warner Brothers. Ted's sister, Roberta, was in A&R, and she passed us on to Ted. He came down, saw us at rehearsal, and he said, look, you guys just play your stuff, and I'll, when I've heard enough, I'll raise my hand. Well, he never raised his hand, and when we finished, he said, hey, let's make a record.
Yeah, and so for those who don't know, and I can't imagine someone watching doesn't, but Ted Templeman, legendary producer, did all the Van Halen records, and went on to do some of the David Lee Roth records after that too, and countless other, and countless other things. So, so it's a pretty big deal to have him produce you guys, but I feel that you're going to go into the studio and learn the lesson that most bands learned at that time, working with name producers, which is they have an agenda and maybe they have other things going on and they're making a hell of a lot more money than the band. And maybe it's not exactly what you envisioned. So you tell me what it was like working with Ted.
Well, it was wonderful working with Ted. Frankly, I wasn't a fan of what he'd done with Mirrors, Aerosmith record. So I wasn't sure that Ted was going to be a great fit for us, but it's hard to, it's hard not to be enamored with that pedigree. So I put aside any reservations I had, and we went in the studio, and everything went really well. He definitely wanted to get the rhythm section squared away, and that gave me a lot of time to finalize my parts and get more and more comfortable with what I was doing. By the time we got in the studio, he had a very structured way of going about things, which was a great thing to see, a great lesson to learn. And those are the good things. The bad things are that he's a superstar producer, and if he doesn't feel like coming in, or he feels like there's a helicopter following him on the freeway, he doesn't have to come in. And that was part of the problem.
Hold on, Mick. That's too. I can't let that get by. Is that an actual story that he thought a helicopter was following him on the freeway?
Ted can't make it. There's a helicopter over his car. He went home.
Yeah. Well.
And don't get me wrong, I love Ted to death. But if you read his book, you will come away with the very clear element of him not thinking our lyrics were clean enough. He thought we were pretty nasty and overtly sexual. Well, let me just let you know that most of Good Girl was inspired by Ted.
Gotcha. Nothing wrong with sexy, right?
Evidently, not until you write your book, at least.
Yeah, it's now I got to read his book. You just did the ultimate sale for his book.
It's a good book. I loved it, but come on, Ted.
Yeah, I hear a lot of bands talk about similar issues that you had. Like, we spent a lot of time playing video games in the lobby or ordering food because the producer wasn't there. And I think you guys had a little bit of that, right?
Well, we made good use of the time. I mean, we definitely spent the time playing. We didn't want to waste it. I mean, I felt horrible, because I knew that we were just burning $2,000 a day, and we weren't getting anything done. The word of the day was let Jeff premix, everything. And I've been in enough studios at that point, and I've done enough stuff at my place to know that premixing is basically leave them alone and get out of there. But we were able to actually record a lot of demos and get a lot of work done at the time. So it wasn't a total loss, but it makes for a very expensive record that didn't necessarily have to be expensive, just like videos back then. I mean, I'm sure we ran up a $300,000 video bill somewhere along the lines. And it's just, when you compare how things are now today to then, it's just, so bloated.
Oh, it's got to blow your mind to know that you can make a record in a home studio, send it in, never see anybody, shoot your video on an iPhone, and it would look just as good as every other video that's playing. And then think about how much money was being spent. And I think a lot of these name producers started taking on new clients because labels had money for them.
Yeah.
And, and because at that point they start jumping from guy to guy, band to band. And maybe it becomes the sort of cash grab. Not to say that the record doesn't sound great and that people didn't like it. And so for you as a guitar player, it's got to be odd working, or not odd, but it's something to work with the guy who produced Eddie Van Halen on all those records. Was he able to give you any guitar tips on recording or anything that you took away?
No, no, not really. He's just kind of let me do my thing, and I, stripped down my style, I guess you would say. I did a lot more hammering back in the King Kobra days, and gradually sort of weeded that out. But by the time I got in the studio with Ted, I was reluctant to do it at all. I mean, even a single, tap would cause consternation to me. So I definitely didn't want to try to follow in those footsteps. I wanted to create my own path. And I think he understood that. And he, there might have been a time or two where he said, let's go in a different direction with that lead. But, for the most part, I just try to, like I said, create an identity of my own.
Yeah. But as far as the band goes, you got a lot of obvious comparisons to Van Halen, especially having Ted Templeman produce the record, and then sort of Mark's vibe. Do you think that was manufactured?
Well, I certainly I've been a part of the vocal sessions. I think I would have had, more of an issue with some of that stuff than Ted did. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it created energy for the record. And if, people are going to make that comparison anyway, I think no matter what we did, just like you said, by virtue of being on Warner Brothers, by virtue of Ted Templeman producing it, we probably don't even have to step into the studio before people start talking about Van Halen. Right. So I don't think we really had a fair shot at it no matter what. But, at that point, I can honestly say that was us. I mean, that was what we were doing live. And certainly everybody in the band was a fan of Van Halen. Did we borrow from their cup more than once? I don't know. That's for other people to say. I feel like we sort of had our thing going on.
Yeah. And like you said, these comparisons are going to be made, and maybe Mark, had a little bit of that vibe, but people still like this band for what it is. We're looking at the record cover. Tell me what this record cover is.
That is a shot that was taken in, and forgive me if I don't get everything correct here, early on, like in the 30s. So that might be one of the first photos of its kind. And I'm trying to remember the name of the photographer. He's quite renowned and famous for this kind of work. And frankly, this is an image that Ted fell in love with and thought would be appropriate. I just love the blue, frankly. I love the contrast. And so I was all good with it. But yeah, we had a lot of interesting concepts for our first album cover. And this one, I think, was the best of all of them. Yeah,
well, and I think it's memorable. You know what I mean? I think when you look at that, even without the name Bullet Boys, you remember that was the cover for that band. And having a cover that stands out is definitely, an important thing. So record comes out, and MTV starts playing "Smooth Up In Ya," right? That's the first single, isn't it?
Yeah, but it was also the second single because a little known fact is that Smooth Up pretty much died on the vine the first time it came out. So that video was essentially what breathed life back into our band, that song, and our careers.
So you put Smooth Up out, and it doesn't do so well. So does For the Love of Money come out next?
No, Smooth Up came out again. We did the
So you
video
just put,
for
I
it,
see, you just
and
put
they
it out
re-released
twice.
it. Yeah, essentially, yeah, because it didn't have any legs under it the first time, and they, in fact, didn't even want us to go out on the road. They wanted us to stay home, and the consensus was that we'd probably implode before we ever got out there. So we kind of forced the issue and went out with Ian Hunter and Mick Ronson, which was an amazing tour
Yeah.
considering that Mick died shortly after that. And even then, our record was still didn't have any legs under it. And yeah, when that video came out, it hit, and suddenly there were hundreds of people at our shows, where previously there'd been 30 or 40.
Yeah. So, and that shows the power of MTV at the time. You have a video, and it stands out. People are going to relate to it. And, you know, and it was a slick video, had cool imagery and catchy song, obviously, and sort of related to people. Then they make the decision to put you guys out on the road. What's the first tour you guys do for this?
Oh wow, that's a tough one. I think we may have gone out and done some headlining dates until we connected with obviously with Cinderella and Winger,
Mhm.
which took us through most of '89. Frankly, at least the whole summer, we were out with them for probably 3 or 4 months.
I saw it at Nassau Coliseum in New York, Long Island. So that
Oh wow!
that tour, yeah.
I don't even remember playing Nassau. Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, see, it was good. You were good that night. But so the record's doing well. But like you've said, you're still in debt. As popular as it is, and this was one of those misconceptions at the time. You're being seen. You're out there. People love it. You're playing big venues, but you're still in debt because this record was very expensive to make, as were most bands. And so we're going to jump ahead a little bit to the to your follow up Freak Show, which is 91. Now you have, so there's a little time between 98 and 91. Did you already feel that things were changing?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty obvious, but we were prepared to combat that with our own sort of warfare. It didn't necessarily work for us, but yeah, we went into the studio and were determined to make, you know, a tougher, heavier, crunchier record. And that I think we did. And when the label came to us for our choice of the first single, our decision to go with THC Groove, let's just say it didn't sit as well with program directors as it did with us. So that wasn't necessarily perhaps, you know, the optimal choice, but it was indicative of the time, as you said, because we recognized the landscape was changing, and that was our way of saying essentially, fuck you, we're not going to bend to anyone else's rules.
The decision to bring Ted Templeman back, how does that go?
Well, it really wasn't a decision because he was our guy.
Right.
So it was kind of written in stone from day one that Ted was going to take us along, you know, wherever he was going. But it was more of the same. You know, Ted had more and more things to do and was branching out, and time again was an issue. And this record took longer to make than, of course, anybody ever wanted to. So we just found ourselves, you know, basically in an avalanche of debt at that point.
Yeah, I can imagine. Although you guys are still playing and doing some big tours, I believe you're touring with Poison on this.
Yeah,
on
we
this
did some
record,
dates
right?
with Poison. Yeah, we did a lot of headlining dates. We did some smaller tours, and it got quite a lot of mileage out of the record. We had a great time supporting it, you know, because we were really proud of it. So
Yeah, and so I got to tell you my story. You guys were supposed to play probably the Meadowlands with Poison, and somebody in Poison got sick. The show was canceled, and you guys played CBGB's, the legendary punk rock venue in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And I was there with multiple people because no one really knew. Do you remember that and how it came about?
I actually didn't remember that there was a cancellation. I knew there was something had gone awry, and our managers just sort of forced this thing through at CBGB's. And I just remember being almost kind of intimidated. Like, oh, wait a minute, I'd rather play. It's going to be easier for me to play Meadowlands than to go into this, sanctuary, this inner sanctum of some of my favorite bands, Television and the Ramones and Blondie and all these amazing groups that I grew up on. Man, I'm gonna have to play well.
Yeah, well, and you did. It was really a great show, and I feel like it was kind of a cool thing to have been a part of.
Yeah. There are so many moments like that in my life, and frankly, that ranks up there because who can say they played CBGBs in a hard rock capacity?
Yeah, and you were a California band as well. So there's not many bands of your era that can say they did that. I mean, I really can't think of many.
That's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. We didn't really have any business being there, and that's kind of how we've gone about our careers. Really, we've taken that as a challenge and tried to live up to it every single time.
Yeah, and well, those are the really cool things about doing it when you get to do something different and unexpected. 1993, this is Zaza. Now, 93, things have really changed. Grunge is in and the scene has changed. What's it like with this album? Ted Templeman again producing. Was there any thought of not making this record? Were you in danger of getting dropped?
No, not at all. In fact, the record label, Warner Brothers, I mean, I have to be clear, they were behind us 100% the entire time. They never resisted us on anything that we really wanted to do. They gave us ample tour support, which again, ultimately contributes to your debt. But that's the conundrum, right? Like, I can sit here and make records all day long, and I don't know how I'm ever going to get anybody to hear them. On the other hand, I can go to Warner Brothers and spend $300,000 and people will hear the record. People will know it's out there at least, and we'll have a chance,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we were talking about earlier. That's just the choice you have to make and live with at some point. But,
I ask that question constantly. How do you make a record now? Because some people I've interviewed have made great records, but I just don't know how you get the word out. How do you sell a record now? So while the record company might be a double-edged sword, at least you knew they were going to do the best, or hopefully do the best to get these things out.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people did a lot worse than us. Some people had labels that just couldn't get anything going with their records, and that's a shame too, because I know everybody works hard on their music and they should be proud of it. So, I certainly don't mean to sound like I'm complaining about anything. It's just the fact of life. And it's a different landscape now. And I've certainly heard people say, look, I made this record, but I'm not putting it out. Why would I put it out? Everybody wants it for free. And, that's just a shame that it's come to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard an interesting thing. They said it used to be you would give somebody like a free something, a T-shirt or a toy with the CD as the bonus. But now people buy the T-shirt and the toy to get the CD is just the bonus. You know what I mean? Like, it's a whole new way of selling music. You come up with these packages hoping that someone will take the music that that they can just listen to online. And so it is definitely a new world. And so this record comes out, and tell me how it's doing when it first comes out. Were you getting a response?
Well, we chose to come out with the one and only ballad we've ever really done as the lead single. And although it wasn't skyrocketing into space, the record company, again, all credit to Warner Brothers, they were working it, and it was starting to get some play here and there. but again, it didn't look like it was just going to skyrocket at that point. So I think everybody could sort of feel a little disappointment. And, the shows that we had coming out, there weren't any big tours at that point. Again, like you said, the whole horizon basically went up in flames for what we were doing. Although, I felt like we were sort of apart from all that. It affected us in the same way. So yeah, you could sort of see the writing on the wall once this record came out.
And then also personalities are clashing within the band.
Yeah, certainly. We've been through a lot together, and obviously, it's like any hockey team. If you're winning, you can overlook all that stuff. But when things aren't going the way you want them to go, things get, a little more filled with tension and conflict. So that was definitely a part of it. So in '93, I felt like I'd had enough, and I said I was not going to do any more records, and I'd certainly promote this one and see it through, but I didn't want to be in the band anymore. So that came to fruition, and Jimmy left as well, and that began a period of introspection for me, and certainly stepping back a little bit and seeing what I wanted to do. And meanwhile, Mark and Lonnie the idea was to carry on, with the name Bullet Boys, and that's what they did.
And so I have to ask you, how does it feel to be home and see the band that you created with, these guys, and see them traveling with 600 different lineups or whatever it is of these guys who had nothing to do with that band? It was a revolving door. How are you feeling when you see that going on?
Well, it certainly is a tinge of ugly, but I disassociated myself entirely from it. I really didn't pay any attention, and thankfully at the time, there really wasn't an internet where you could follow all that. So I was blissfully unaware of a lot of that until much later on. But yeah, I mean, it was sad for me to see something that we built up into, what we thought of as something, with a lot of integrity and something that was a powerful force. And it seemed to be diluted a little bit with all the comings and goings.
It definitely seemed that way. I had Joey Allen on from Warrant last week, and he has his story similar to yours. In '93, he left Warrant and didn't come back until much later, and until they did a reunion and did it properly. And Warrant continued with different lineups. Not as bad in this case of Bullet Boys, which eventually just becomes Mark. And then it almost feels like whoever will take the road trip, and then that's the... and I know that at one point you gave your rights to the name.
Yeah, I did that in '93. I mean, my feeling at that point was I just wanted to go home, get in my studio, and start working on ambient music and doing more acoustic things and just experimenting. And that was where my mind was at. And I really just didn't want anything to do with any of that at all at the time. So
did you regret that decision?
Sorry?
Did you regret the decision to give up your rights?
I would have done something differently back then. Absolutely. But I was in, I was very convinced that I just needed to disassociate entirely. And that was the price of it at the time. And at that point it worked. I didn't foresee how it was going to turn out. And certainly if I could have done something to better that, I would have. So, yeah.
You wouldn't have Steven Adler as a Bullet Boys on your Wikipedia.
Yeah. Well, price of an education, right?
Yeah. And by the way, Steven Adler, I'm picking the big ones. There's
yeah, you are.
There's a phone book of other, as they say, scabs. But so here's what's interesting to me. The Bullet Boys are back. It's the original lineup, which is what people want to see. Whatever your differences are, you've put them aside. But now, Mick, I got to be honest. You've done this before. You've gotten back together. You play a show, and that's it. So I got to say to people at home, should they come out? Could this end any day again?
Well, certainly that is always the case with anything. But yes, they should come out because it's very different now. Certainly, we've worked through a lot of the things that we had to work through. Everybody has a different understanding now, and I think everybody values the brand now in the proper way. And I think the landscape is ready for us, and the path is clear, and we're doing our best. Obviously there are always stumbles here and there. It's rock and roll. I'd be uncomfortable if there weren't. But the reality is that I love these guys. I love playing with them. I really can't play like this anywhere else with any other band. I've tried. It doesn't work. We have a symbiosis that is, to me, something that money can't buy, and it makes virtually everything we've gone through, for better or worse, it makes it worth it when we get in a room. I just love these guys so much personally, and we've been through the wars. You might understand what it's like to be with, just in a small sort of cabal of people who are the only ones that really understand how you feel and what you've been through. And that's kind of what this band is about. In fact, there's somebody that Jimmy knows who's made the comment, like, just sitting back and looking at us going like, I'll never have that, man. I will never have that. I've never had it, and I never will. And so it's apparent to everybody when we get in a room, and he's not the only person that's ever said that, but it just validates how I feel, because like I said, playing with these guys, it really sort of transcends any issues we may have.
Yeah, you're a little bit older, you're a little bit wiser, all of you. And I think that this is an exciting thing. You can go on these cruises or these festivals, and you're going to see a lot of bands that have, sometimes two different versions of the same band. Sometimes you're going to get just a bass player as the original guy. So I think there's something really cool when you see a band like the Bullet Boys, and you go, you know what? You're seeing the four guys who are on that record. You're seeing all the performers who are part of that band. And I think fans like it. And I think as long as everyone's alive and you can put differences aside, I think it's a good thing. And now the pandemic obviously slowed down a year of plans for you guys, as it has for everybody. But you are out playing right now. You're jumping on a lot of these kind of fun package shows, and people should realize that, the Bullet Boys don't have to get in a tour bus and spend months on the road. You guys can fly in to cities and do that, and then still come home and work in your studio and do other projects. It's also probably perfect. You guys don't have to get sick of each other, so to speak. You're not all in a little tiny thing. You guys fly in, nice to see each other, play the best show, and then move on. Do you think you guys would ever record music again?
Yeah, that's part of the plan. Actually, we spent the last couple of weeks putting some tracks together. So that is always sort of a focus, although the shows and everything that's been going on have not really allowed us to focus as much as we want. But yeah, I would say you could safely expect some new music from us in the future. Yeah,
that's great. I was talking to Mark Knight from Bang Tango, and they have their original lineup together, and they had a similar issue, very similar. And as far as different players and one person holding the name. And I said, what a cool bill it is to have Bullet Boys and Bang Tango, considering you guys played together back in the day.
Yeah, we had a run
where you're going to see a show with 9 original guys. There's no, and that's rare these days, obviously.
Yeah, it is. I mean, sadly, people are unable to tour or unable to play or even have passed away. So it's we feel very fortunate, and we feel like we still have a lot to bring. And we feel like a lot of people may not have seen us back in the day and may have missed what we were about. Certainly, there are a lot of things that have been said about us, but I think the proof is in the pudding, as they say. And when people see us, I think they'll understand that there are a lot of things that set us apart.
Yeah, and there's also fans who are younger. People have turned on to this music who never would have had a chance to see it the first time. There's definitely that retro thing.
Oh, it's crazy how young people are, and yeah, I get a lot of mail from South America, and they're kids. They're kids listening to King Kobra and BulletBoys, and it's the wildest thing.
Yeah, you can never imagine that this stuff would survive, but it has, and it's so great that you can do something new with it. And then we'll link Bullet Boys website and social media so people can see the dates, because they're starting to come out more now.
Yeah,
And
great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're going out this weekend, and who are you playing with this weekend?
Well, I think our first night is with Lita Ford and Winger, and then we're doing a big festival. Man, I can't even think of all the bands. It's a huge festival in Denver.
I think there's a lot. I think Warrant and Lynch and
yeah, it's called Freedom Fest, and it's for our warriors. So I highly recommend you check that out and go if you can. And then we're going to headline in Texas on Sunday. So that'll be fun in Fort Worth.
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm going to say, though, Mick, even though everyone's getting along, if the Bullet Boys come to your town, don't say you'll catch them next time.
Yeah, you'd best come out and see us when you can.
Yeah, anything can happen in this world of rock and roll. Yeah. And we'll link some of your other music also, because we didn't get into too much. In the off time, you put out a solo record, Songs in the Key of Cool, which is a great title. And that was a children's record, sort of, right?
Yeah, that hopefully adults can listen to as well.
Yeah, well, that's the goal. If you can get the kids, the parents have to suffer through it. It's got to be good. So I think you did that. And then again, the Hot Summers, I can't really describe it enough, but this is really great pop rock. If people like Journey or, even there's even more contemporary kind of music, but it's great. And I think people will really like it. And you have more of that coming as well.
Yeah, we absolutely do. So look for that, and look for Bullet Boys to be in a town near you soon. And yeah, we'll make up for the dearth of music and activity that we suffered through last year.
Yeah, what a great attitude, because I feel like, okay, well, now you have a chance. Let's push it ahead, and we'll make up for that.
Yeah.
It'll only be better this time.
Yeah, right on, brother.
Thank you so much, Mick. I really appreciate you joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. Let's stay in touch. And you're in Vegas, right?
Yes, I hope to see the Bullet Boys out here.
Yeah, we're going to be at the Golden Nugget, so come see us.
Perfect. I'll be there, and we'll bring everyone who's watching.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, take care.
All right.